Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and today I'm going to analyze a case that has been. It's pretty much one of the strangest unsolved cases that is all over the internet because it's so peculiar and nobody can figure it out. And it is the case of Hugues de la Plaza, this guy here, a 36-year-old man in San Francisco who was murdered on, what's the date? June 2nd, 2007. So it's 17 years old. So I don't think it's going to be solved. And what I want to take you through is, what are the possibilities? What is the most realistic scenario that happened to this guy? Because the police think, well, at least at some point, the police thought he stabbed himself to death, but the family and other people think it's a homicide. Now, most of the time when I see a family say that, it's oftentimes the police is right and they just don't want to deal with it. But is this really a homicide? Because the whole case is so strange. So I'm going to get into that in a minute. And before I do, I want to thank everybody who is in the chat room for coming back on Monday, which is Labor Day here in the US. The show is usually on Sunday. But unfortunately, my internet provider, Verizon, went on the blink in our entire area, and it went out for probably almost 24 hours. And once in a while, it would pop in for like a minute and then vanish again. So I could not do the live show. So thank you for coming back today. And I will say this, I'm not sure that it's really fixed. So if all of a sudden it just goes blank, what I'm going to do, if it just stops, I will send you a message through Patreon to come back in 5-10 minutes, whatever I say, and then we'll continue the show, and then I'll have my son edit the show back together again, because I don't do editing, and once in a while my son is very, very helpful with these things. Well, actually, he's very helpful anytime I ask. He's a good guy. And if you'd like to be in the chat room, folks who are out there, this is Patreon. I have one level, $5 a month. You can come to 8 lives and participate in the chat room and also in our community. And it helps support an educational channel. Of course, you don't have to join Patreon to see all of my videos. Every one of them goes public after I do the lives. They're all public because I want you to be able to learn about criminal profiling, crime scene analysis, and logic. And many of you are not in law enforcement or ever going to be, but you have found that it's useful in your regular life, and that's cool. So just subscribe to the channel. That supports me too. Click the bell for notifications and check my playlist. And you can also support my channel if you want to buy one of my books below, or click the little $sign. Okay, enough of that. Let's get to the show. All right, so let me just say, look back in my chat room a second just to, I got to take my glasses off now. The glasses that you all know don't really work at the moment. So anyway, Pam went away and came back. Welcome back, Pam. Harpa says, see and hear and hope the internet will be stable. Yeah, it's pretty unusual for it to go out in Maryland. One of the reasons it's difficult sometimes if you try to do the show from another location in the world. I've done it from Puerto Rico and everything went fine there. I'd like to do it from India, but sometimes things are real unstable internet-wise or power-wise, and I don't know how well I could do lives from there. You can do a video, and if it craps out, you just have to edit your video. But live is a little trickier. But here, almost never happens. Oh, really? Well, I don't have the problem of Verizon, and I hate Xfinity, so we all have our preferences. Okay, so more people are coming in. Maybe's here, Shaz is here. Okay. Anyway, whoever is coming in, welcome to y'all. All right, let's get to this very fascinating case. All right, so we're going back 17 years. And I'll read this is from San Francisco Gate. There's not a lot of information on this case. There is a 48-hour show. I will link that below. It sucks. It'll tell you the story, but I expected more from 48 hours. I expected more about the evidence. And they did a lot of flashing of pictures, like the blood spatter patterns. And then you didn't know where they were. And you didn't know you didn't know all about the timeline exactly. And you didn't know certain pieces of information, which I'm going to tell you about that I don't know. Because it's very important when you're going to look at a case and analyze it. If you're missing these really important pieces of information, you're kind of screwed. And telling a story is easy, but analyzing without the proper information is very difficult. So I'm going to take you through the basic story. I'll show you where the documentary and anything that's public is missing. And the documentary people, there's no reason why they couldn't have gotten some of the information and put it there clearly instead of, I think they just wanted a flashy story. So I'm not happy with it. And I also have this report that was done by, and this is the best part of it. So hang in, because I'm going to go through his report. The family hired a guy to do he was a forensic pathologist. His name is Michael Ferenc. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly. Ferenc. I'm going to go through his autopsy. He's not the autopsy. Sorry, his review of the death scene and autopsy findings. Okay, that he was hired to do, and I was very impressed. And I like to be impressed because sometimes people go, "Don't you think anybody else can do a good job here?" No, this guy did. I like what this guy said, and so I'm going to go through that with you. But first, what happened to this guy? What is so strange about this case if you've never heard of this case before? All right, so let me pull this one back up again. I'm trying to pick the best one. This one. Sorry. Okay, here we go. This is the clearest one. At 2 a.m., June 2nd, 2007, this guy, Hugues, sorry, I put the H in. It's no H. Hugues de la Plaza left the company of his friends at the underground SF bar in the Lower Haight. I'm sorry, I don't know San Francisco. Is it Haight? Yeah, I think that's the way it's pronounced. Okay, so he was. This is basically the story that you get from the friends who were with him. So he was at this place, the underground, and he was having a good time. It was after work. They went there. He drank quite a lot. Didn't pick up anybody, and this is very important for the case. All his friends say he was a huge womanizer. He loved women. He liked sex. He liked sex with any woman. And apparently, with your wife, with your girlfriend, but with your mom, whomever, he just enjoyed sex and life. And he was a good-looking fellow. He was a good personality. And so he had a good job in San Francisco. He was from France, and the French accent apparently attracted the women. And they said he would say his name like very, very French, and I can't do it, but Hugues, Hugues, or something, spectacular. And the women would go, "Oh, he's French," and then he'd get to sleep with him. So he had a good thing going there. But he left the bar by himself approximately 2:00 in the morning. And he said he hoped he could find somebody to have sex with. He kind of said that to his friends. He'd like to get laid. And so he leaves the bar. And this is a terrible picture, but there's supposedly a camera here. And the friends, there's a picture of him. Well, no, picture or like a shadow of person supposedly arriving at his home. Okay. And so he arrives home. There's no question he arrives home. And there's nobody following him that they say. There's just him. Now, the camera is the first thing that's really annoying in this case that they don't tell you about. Because later on they'll say that no one was seen when he was murdered or not murdered. There was no one seen outside his house. So who else could have been involved? Well, that's the problem. There's this, I don't know about that stupid camera, and I would like to know about that stupid camera. I really would. So supposedly it's like this thing. I don't know if this is even a real camera. Again, when you're watching these shows, half the time you don't know what the picture is of, whether this is the real camera or they put a picture of a camera in. So you don't know what you're looking at. And they don't say, now with a people moving around and they're showing the murder or something, they'll put reenactment. But a lot of times with the other information, they'll put in something and won't tell you that it's fake, and that's annoying because now I'm basing something on a fake picture. So I don't know if that's a real camera or not. I also don't know where the hell the camera was. Where did the camera see him coming down? He came down that street. apparently through a pretty crappy area, by the way. People say it's kind of a ghetto area, not a nice area of town, but no one was following him. So one of the theories could be that, he got home, and when he was going up the steps, somebody attacked him and tried to rob him. But supposedly he arrived home and went in the house. So that didn't happen. And there's no information about the camera showing anybody. Okay. So he did go home, and we don't know much about where the camera was and what it could actually see. I'll keep this in mind as I go further. All right. So he's a 36-year-old sound engineer, happy guy, always laughing and smiling and hitting on girls. Okay. Classic Hugues. All right. Now we have classic Verizon not connecting to my iPad. Stop that. Okay. It was a half a mile walk to his apartment, so 10 minutes to his apartment on 462 Linden Street. And a security camera on Linden captured him arriving at his home. But I don't know what arriving at his home means. What part of the camera sees him where? Did they see him like walking down the street and then up the steps to his house? Did they only see him at the door? What part is visible on the camera? Nobody talks about this, and I think that's annoying. But he got home, and we know that because he ended up on his computer and stuff like that. And so he gets home, a triplex with 3 doors, all in a row. And that is true. Let's see if I have a picture of the triplex. Let me show you the front steps because, okay. See, these are the front steps. You can see there's blood outside the apartment. So he got home and he went inside. So this means the blood is from when he came back outside. Now, the question remains in this case, whether he stabbed himself inside and came out and then went back in, or he came out for some reason, got stabbed, and went back in. So keep that in mind as we go through this. All right. So he goes home, and there's three doors in a row. And they're right next to each other. So that's kind of interesting in the sense that if you have neighbors, they're like this. Okay. Why did he knock on a neighbor's door and say, help, help? We don't know, but that never happened. All right. And supposedly a neighbor heard the door close, the front door close. All right. So he goes in. Once inside, he made himself a snack of rice and peas. And that is absolutely true because there is proof of that. There was food in his stomach, the rice and peas, some rice and peas in his tummy, although not a whole bunch of them. Here's the kitchen. All right. And you will see up on the left, that's a plate of rice and peas. Okay. And there's a pot there. So he cooked some rice with some peas in it. And we at least know that he ate the rice and peas. We actually don't know if he made the rice and peas. So again, we have to be careful of trying to understand this. Was the rice and peas made earlier and he just put it on a plate and ate some of it? Did he make it when he got home and then eat it? We don't know that. I don't know that that's terribly important, except for how long was he home before he ended up on the front stoop, bleeding to death. Because apparently, supposedly, and again, documentary, what is wrong with you? Why don't we know how long he was home? Why don't we have, he was on the computer. Why don't we have information from the computer? Why is that not, can't you get that from the police report or something? Or maybe the police wouldn't talk to him. I don't know. But they should say then, we don't know how long he was home because we did not have access to that information. But they theorize about 30 minutes. So now he's home. He goes on the computer. He's looking up sex sites and stuff. I think this is before Tinder. So I don't think, this is a good point though. Does anybody know when Tinder started? When you could hook up with somebody and go down the street and have sex? Does anybody know that? Because in today's world, Tinder is so popular that theoretically you could hook up in a heartbeat. And you got home and you're like, man, I still want sex. And oh, look, somebody on Tinder, I'll go down and or open the door and I'll meet them and bring them in. This was 2007. I don't think Tinder was around. Does anybody know about that? I'm going to address this. You say messy kitchen. I want to point this out because this is a great point you make. Thank you very much for saying that, actually. When you look at this kitchen, and again, here's where we don't have proper information when you're trying to understand how something went down. This is the kitchen. What you see, it looks like a dirty kitchen, for example. You see all that gray stuff. Oh my God, did he ever wash his the cabinets and anything? I'm not sure that's not fingerprint. I'm not sure they weren't dusting for fingerprints there, and that's what all the gray is. And the doors open, interestingly enough. You'll see the blood is under the doors. So in the beginning, I'm looking at this going, did he go back into the kitchen to look for something? What the hell was he looking for under the sink? But then I looked at that and I'm like, it looks more like, to me, those were closed when he went into the kitchen. And they were opened up later, perhaps when the fingerprinting was done, perhaps when they were checking things out. We do not have any information as to when this stupid picture was taken. Was it taken when they arrived? In other words, you're doing crime scene photos, you want a timestamp on it, you want to know that this is the first thing you saw when you came in, not something that was taken after the fact, hours later. I have no clue. And that's the problem. So, but that's a good point, because I thought the same thing. Now, I don't know if a picture is here on my background. Hold on a second. I do notice he has a bunch of plates in the sink. Let's see. You can see in this part. Okay, his food is here. He likes to have good water, and the pot is over here. He does have like 6 plates stacked up in the sink. He's a bachelor. I don't know that I call that a complete mess, but he's a bachelor. So let's stick with that. All right. So now I'm going to go back and see if anybody said anything about Tinder. If when Tinder started, let's see how many of you are on Tinder. Are there footprints in that blood? Not outside? There are not. Supposedly there are in the kitchen, but they're very faint. Hard to see them. I'll get into the footprints in a minute. Oh, 2012, Tinder. Okay, so yeah, see, there's no Tinder at the time. So the last phone call, now here's where it gets confusing again. Was it? I can't remember if it said it was to a friend. I'm blanking now. Somebody said, oh, I talked to him, blah, blah, blah. We don't know who that is, and we don't know what they talked about. And that friend could be a suspect, that friend, because the last person he talked, if he came home and talked to somebody at a specific time after he arrived home, we don't know what the conversation was, because it's not a text message, So he could have said, hey, whatever, to somebody, and they could have said, I'll come over. And that person could have come over and killed him. But I don't know who it was, when it was, and all that, whether they ever checked it out. That, again, is missing information. I personally don't think that person, if he talked to somebody after he got home, a friend, was involved. But still, where's the information on it? So, all right. So you're not on there? Oh, Clarissa. Good for you. Good for you. Tinder is creepy as hell. Sorry, it is. It's just creepy. Man on Tinder posing as a woman at 2 a.m. Well, if Tinder were around, that could be possible. Also, he liked women. I don't know that I never heard that he liked men, but I mean, again, I don't know. But apparently there was nobody he contacted that was a suspect, as in they were meeting or they were coming over. There's no evidence of that. At least the police have never given out that kind of information, that he had a plan to meet with somebody, which would be interesting, which is one of the reasons they said this was not a murder, because they said nobody came over there. And I don't know about that stupid camera, whether they're basing things on the camera because the camera is accurate. In other words, if the camera truly only saw his doorway, or not the doorway, but this whole area with his blood. So there's blood here it's going up the steps here. There's blood here. Now, did the camera encompass this part? Let me show you that area of the street. This area, this is outside now. So here's the outside of the house. You see the 3 doors? There's the 3 doors. So to go into any one of those homes, you go up those 3 doors. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, you're up on that landing. And then you go into your house. Now, there is blood on the landing. There it is. You can see it's just on the top of the landing going onto the top step. And there's a couple more. This is from the house itself looking down. You can see it there. And there's some more there. That's another picture of it. And so he's been stabbed, or has stabbed himself, or he already stabbed himself and came outside. So it all gets very confusing. So anyway, that's what's outside. Now, one of the things also is interesting to me, which I've never heard them even talk about. Could it not be his neighbor? Why couldn't his neighbor have stabbed him? I've never heard anything about the neighbors. One neighbor said he heard some commotion at some point. Well, maybe it was the neighbor. Who knows? I don't know, because there's no information on the neighbors. There's no information on the police and interviews of the neighbors, but they certainly would have close access to this guy. Now, if the camera only showed the bottom of the step, for example, if it was a neighbor, they wouldn't have been down at the bottom step. They'd just be right there, coming out of their door, attacking him there, and he'd go back in the house, trying to save himself from the neighbor and shut the door behind him. And the reason he wouldn't knock on the neighbor's door is because his neighbor stabbed him. I mean, what are you going to do? The neighbor's between you and getting down the stairs. The neighbor's between you. Let's say it's the guy. Well, one of those doors. Let's say Hugues came out and somebody knocked on his door, and he thought the neighbor said, "Hugues, Hugues." So he knows it's his neighbor. So he comes out, and the neighbor, for whatever reason, stabs him. He can't go anywhere. There's nowhere he can go. He can't get to the other neighbor's door. The only thing he can do is go back in and lock himself in his house. That's it. He did go in and lock himself in his house, by the way. He bled on the landing and down that step, and then he went back in the house. There's evidence he went back in the house and shut the door and deadbolt and pulled and turned the deadbolt to lock himself in. So the problem with the camera issue is, if the camera is trained on the 3 doors, we should have evidence of somebody and Hugues on that landing when he's bleeding out. Not necessarily that he's being stabbed, but he's bleeding out there. He's either alone or there's somebody else there. But if the camera is not trained on the 3 doors and is trained, let's say the camera is only on, the bottom step you see down there. Well, you would see Hugues coming home because he'd be coming up that step. But if it didn't go to the doors, a neighbor could step out, stab him, and go right back in, and you'd never know that the neighbor was involved. What you would know was that nobody came up those stairs to stab Hugues, and so then you should look at the neighbors. But I, again, don't know where the stupid camera is. Now, the camera could actually be on the street, facing a certain direction. I don't know if the camera was crappy. I just don't know. So I don't know where the camera would have focused, whether it would have seen somebody coming down the street and going up those steps and attacking him. I don't know if it did all of those things, and therefore the police said, hey, look, we had a clear view of the area and all we saw was Hugues coming out and going back in. I don't know if the neighbor could be seen coming out of his house. You see how important small pieces of information are. The camera is, to me, one of the critical pieces of information trying to understand the case. And we got nothing. Outside of the camera, wherever it was, saw Hugues, maybe, because it was a shadow. Was it Hugues? We don't know. The friends say it was Hugues that looked like him in a shadow. Yeah. So that's one of the biggest problems we have already. All right. No. Okay, good point. Is the front door the only door on his apartment? Is there a back entrance? There is a back entrance. Let me try to show you the pictures of the door issue. Hold on a second. This, okay, wait a minute. Hold on a second. I think this is the front. Wait, what's this picture? Okay, I think this is the front door. Because there looks like blood on it, and it looks like there's a deadbolt on it. So supposedly, he came in back. He was bleeding on the front. So I'm not going to get into where he was stabbed yet, because we don't actually know. But I'll get into that. So we have blood. He's obviously, if this is the front door, which they didn't bother to point out really, he would open the doors. He's already bleeding. Goes inside, and there's supposedly blood on the inside of the door as well, and he locked it. The top lock. So either he went, which is weird. If he stabbed himself, I don't think he'd really care whether the door was locked. But because he locked it, it almost seems like somebody was after him, and that was his only way of keeping the guy from him. Then we have this picture. I don't know what the hell this is. Is that still the front? Yeah, okay, it is the front door because you can see the stairs. Okay, so that's the front door. I don't know what the piece of plastic is. Again, I don't know when the stupid picture was taken. Thank you very much, whoever put that picture up. This is, I believe, the back door because it looks different. I think. Wait a minute, is that the back door? Hold on a second. Now I got to check this out. Hold on a second. I think yeah, it looks like the back door. Because there's a broom there. There's a mat there. I don't think that's in the front. Oh, yeah, it's red. And you can see that in this picture, it's gray out there, and here it is red. So this is the back door. The back door was locked and no blood over there. Okay. Now, again, I want to point out these picture issues. I did another case a while back, and one of the things this was a case I worked in Texas, and I showed you the different pictures, which were terrible because they show a footprint here and a footprint there. I'm like, where the hell are the footprints? Is it the living room, the bedroom? What way are they going? I don't have any why don't you have a picture of the room? See, when you do crime scene photography, what you're supposed to do is you take a distant picture, so you have the entire room, and then you move in and you move in and you move in closer, closer, closer. You take all different angles so that you can see exactly where everything is, exactly where a footprint might be, what direction the footprint might be going. Blood spatter pattern, same thing. Is it going this way or that way? If it's on a wall, what wall is it? And a video is very useful. Go in and you video the entire place so you can see everything on video. Now, mind you, today it's much better because we have electronic cameras. And that makes it easy because you can take a crap load of pictures, like 1,000 pictures, and it doesn't cost you anything. Back in the day, they were real cameras, and so they were like really cheap, and they're like, okay, take a picture, we're done. And they sometimes took a couple of Polaroids, and the quality was terrible. So I don't know whether the police in 2007 had tons of great photos of this place, and this is the crap that 48 Hours came up with. I tried to do screenshots off of this as the show was going by. I looked everywhere on the internet for crime scene photos of the Hugues de la Plaza and came up with nothing. So pretty much this is off of 48 Hours. So that's not really inspiring. So knowing whether there's a front door or a back door, I want a picture. I would like a photo of the entire front door and the entire picture of the back of the front door. Where is it? I don't know. Same thing with the back door, same thing with everything. So we have bad crime scene photos. Not saying the police do. I'm just saying outside of the police department, we don't know where the stupid camera is. We don't know where half these pictures are taken and exactly what they mean. So there we are with that. Okay, so let's go a little further in this. So we don't know about the camera. We do know there was a lot of blood on the steps. And you can see most of there's not a lot of movement in the blood. So it's like he got stabbed and he's moving very slowly, or he got stabbed inside as police had claimed originally and came back out. All right. The neighbor says, the neighbor that we don't know who the neighbor is or whether he was ever investigated. Sometime before 3 a.m., a half-dozing neighbor heard a thud come from De La Plaza's unit. Then, as I was listening to noises, I heard De La Plaza's door open and close, then open and close again a few minutes later. And then I heard footsteps running down the stairs. Orion Denley, a hotel concierge, told the San Francisco Chronicle in 2008. Now, if Orion is a good neighbor and has nothing to do with this case, what he heard was, if he heard the door open twice and close twice, that's interesting. Because that would mean, let's say Hugues decided to kill himself and he stabs himself up with a kitchen knife. And then for whatever reasons, which makes no sense, he decides he's going to go out of the house to, I don't know, look around. So he comes out, he opens the door, looks around, closes the door, looks around while he's bleeding to death, and turns around, opens the door again, and closes the door, and then locks it. Not a very reasonable scenario. Now, it makes far more sense that he came out of the house for some reason, and keep the some reason in mind, because we don't know what the possible reason could be. He comes out of the house for some reason, opens the door and closes the door behind him. Now, it's interesting right there. Why does he need to close the door behind him? If somebody has knocked on the door for some reason, and you open the door, you say, "Hi, what's up?" Do you need to close the door behind you? Go out on the landing and close the door. If he did that, you would think there's some reason he found to come out of the house and close the door behind him to meet with this other person. If this is so, then he would get stabbed by that other person. And in fleeing him, opened the door and got inside, closed it and locked it, and then died in the house. He went out apparently because if the door opened and closed twice, now this, mind you, the neighbor has to be telling the truth. What if the neighbor is lying and he only opened the door once and came out, and the neighbor stabbed him and he ran back in and closed it? I'm not saying Mr. Orion Denley has anything to do with it, but I'm pointing out we don't know because we don't have any decent information. So this is a witness. The witness can be telling the truth. The witness can be lying. That's just the way crime investigations go. All right. It says here, it was jarring, sure, but who hasn't heard doors slamming and loud sounds from a neighbor? And Denley says it didn't sound like a scuffle going on at all. So he went back to sleep. And if he's telling the truth and he's not the stabber, I would say that makes sense, because from what we see outside, there wasn't a major struggle, not a major. And I put the word major in for a reason, because we only see blood in a certain way, which means either he came out and just bled on the landing and went back in, or the way he was stabbed didn't cause a major struggle. And I'm going to get into that in a little bit. All right. Then in the morning, the neighbor came out and saw blood all over the front porch, called the police. All right, so they come, they peeked through the window, they saw more blood in the kitchen, and they went inside. They found De La Plaza stabbed 3 times in the chest, neck, and abdomen. This is important. Chest, neck, and abdomen. They were, I forgot to bring a knife. Okay, I'll use a fan. Okay. They were right to left. Okay, right to left in the chest and the abdomen, and not in the neck, but in this area here, like that. Okay, so now the order is interesting. This cut the jugular. I mean, this was a death blow. Whether he did it himself or somebody else did it to him, this was the one that killed him. The abdomen and the chest. I don't have quite the proper autopsy. I'd like to see the whole autopsy. And in the show, this was the detective on the case, and he kind of says a few things, and who knows how much it was edited. And so he sort of defended that he was doing a proper job. And then we have she was the medical examiner at the time, and she says, well, it was a weird crime. And I ended up calling it undetermined, because she said he could have, because I guess he's right-handed, he could have, because of the stabbing, done it to himself. 1, 2, 3. Possible. She labeled it undetermined. Now, some people think that it was ridiculous that she said it was undetermined. She said in the beginning she thought it was a homicide, because oh my God, look what happened. And the knife, nobody knew where the knife was. I'll get to that too. But then she also said, well, possible he could have done it himself, according to just the basics of the examination. That he could have done this. Now, certain other cases that are out there, like Ellen Greenberg, when you get stabbed like many times in the back of the places you can't reach, I'm going to say you didn't kill yourself. But there are many people who have killed themselves by stabbing themselves. So I'm not against this medical examiner, as many people are. I think she was reasonable. She said it was undetermined, because the determination because she can't tell whether he could literally have done it himself as far as the actual cause of the actual the manner of death. See, the manner of death would be accidental, natural, homicide, or suicide, essentially. So you have these basic ways of killing, that people end up dead. And she could not differentiate whether he did it himself or somebody else did it to him. Okay. So I think she was rational. Undetermined is reasonable. And the rest of it is going to be determined by the actual detectives and the police department, because they're going to take the rest of all the evidence. She's not a crime scene analyst. She doesn't have to do that part. That's on the police. They analyze the rest of it and determine whether it was a murder or not. And so that's how he was stabbed, whether he did it himself or somebody else did it to him. All right, it wouldn't take long for the investigators to come in conflict with De La Plaza's loved ones. After surveying the scene, the SFPD detectives began wondering whether this was a suicide. Although there was blood all over, only De La Plaza's footprints were found tracked through the house. If he had been attacked, he never called 911. And this is true. Okay, so we have outside stuff here. And inside the house, we have blood in the kitchen, blood all over the floors, a lot more blood. And do I have a picture of the phone? Yeah, here's a picture of the phone. Do you see any blood? No blood around the phone. So the police were going like, well, if he went outside and somebody stabbed him, why didn't he come in and grab the phone? What the heck? Why is he off in the kitchen? And inside the house, the other thing that was very much noted was that, and the medical examiner noted this, there's no tails on the blood drops. What do I mean by that? Well, when blood drops straight down, plump, 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 it's because either the person is immobile and it's just dropping off of them, or they're moving so slowly it just boom, 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 boom. But if a person's running, trying or escaping, you'll see the blood is flinging and you'll see tails. The blood will hit and it'll leave a tail. And none of that is there. The footprints are only De La Plaza's. The blood is only De La Plaza's. So they had this issue, this weird issue. It's like, he was the only one in the house. He's walking around in slow motion. So they wonder, they're like, maybe, just maybe, and this is what they said, although there was blood tracked all over, it was only De La Plaza's footprints. I never called 911. He never shouted out to a neighbor, help, help. Never happened. And of course, there were the locked doors, the locked front door and the locked back door. They began working the theory that De La Plaza had taken drugs at the bar, like bath salts, and came home and killed himself. All right. And one of the reasons they went this direction, and in the film, you'll see the woman named Melissa Nix. Melissa Nix was his girlfriend for 4 years. Let's see, where is she? Where's my Melissa? Oh, did I forget my Melissa pictures? Dang it all. Okay, everybody takes a shot when I lose my pictures. Where'd my pictures of Melissa go? Hold on. There it is. I forgot to include them. Here she is. This is Melissa. They were together 4 years. She thought he was the most amazing guy. They had a great time, and for some reason they broke up, which she doesn't discuss. All right, but the relationship didn't work out. The pair met when she was 27. They dated for 4 years. She says she was the one who called to tell them that the parents. She was in the police didn't call the parents in France. She did and told them that Hugues was dead. But when she spoke to the SFPD detective, she asked if there was a possibility he had taken his own life. I planted that seed, but I didn't have access. I wasn't in San Francisco. I didn't know anything. I was totally blind. I'm thinking narcissistically that someone killed themselves over a broken heart. And thinking back, I realized plenty of people have bad breakups and don't hurt themselves. Maybe she wanted to think that he missed her dearly. He's dating, he's partying, he's going to Burning Man. He's thinking about moving to Argentina and buying real estate there with the money he saved. He was somebody who was living a pretty full life with or without Melissa Nix. So she's a journalist in Virginia. And she ended up helping the family in a big campaign to get the truth on this case, because she and the family believed he did not kill himself. And where's my picture of that? Here we are. So there was a huge thing, justice for Hugues. And did she set this up? Was it partly her fault? And this is never explained clearly. And this is a problem again. Okay, we got the light that we got the camera we don't quite know. We have the neighbor we don't quite know about. We don't know his exact history in the internet and how long he was on it. And we don't know about suicidal ideation. So he seemed like he was having a dang good time in life. He had money, reasonable money. He had a great job. He was hooking up all the ladies. There doesn't seem to be a great reason. But people do sometimes harbor issues that they don't express in. But this seemed a little odd. You don't usually go out to a party, come home, make some food, go on the internet, and stab yourself. I mean, I've seen people kill themselves pretty quickly, but I'm having trouble with this because the timeline of his night doesn't really add up to him taking his life. Also, nobody knows any good reason because he's having a heck of a good time. I checked. I wanted to know about a life insurance policy. There was only one place I found out about that, and it was he has supposedly this is a claim from the parents, and I don't know if this is true. Again, it's on the media. Only one place I saw this. He had $100,000 life insurance policy, and the parents used that to offer a reward to find out who killed him. I don't know if any of that is true. I wonder why he has a life insurance policy on himself. Maybe because he thought if I die, my parents should get the money because I would want them to be. He's an only child. Maybe he just wanted to make sure they were okay in an older age. Thought that'd be a decent dude. So theoretically, he could have killed himself and then staged it to be a homicide so his parents would get the $100,000. So the police thought maybe he stabbed himself and then he went and washed over at that. The reason he was at the sink was because I'm trying to think about how this would work. Okay, he goes outside to make it look like somebody attacked him. He stabs himself at least twice outside so that there's blood. Because once he gets stabbed in the neck, it's a little riskier. You know what I mean? How far are you going to get type of thing. Maybe he stabbed himself twice. I don't know how deep the wounds were. I don't know if they purposely missed organs. Again, here's what we don't know. And then he goes into the kitchen and stabs himself in the neck and then quickly washes off the knife and puts it away. And at that point, it looks like a suicide. So then he staggers through the house and ends up collapsing. Doesn't call 911 because he doesn't intend to survive. That's why the police think this could be possible. So I'm not totally against the police in their ideas. They apparently, let's see. Okay, here, let's go further. Even if De La Plaza killed himself, where was the deadly knife? Police improbably speculated that after brutally stabbing himself 3 times, he had gone over to the kitchen sink and again brutally stabbed himself 3 times. We don't know how brutally it was. The first 2 stab wounds were survivable. It's the 3rd stab wound that was not. So just because you bleed doesn't mean you can't survive. So the first 2, which I think came before the neck thing, I don't know where they were stabbed. You can stab yourself in the abdomen in a way that kind of misses all the organs, and you can stab yourself the same. I don't know that he would know this. So, but okay. So he does that. He bleeds on the porch, goes in, he closes it. He goes into the kitchen, and the area is at the sink, and he says, okay, this is it. Stab. And he says, I have just enough time to wash the knife and put it away and then wander out and collapse. All right. So they say he stabbed himself 3 times, went over to the kitchen sink and washed the knife clean. Nick says they tried to convince us for 2 weeks or more that he was killed with a steak knife. They had some red substance on one of the knives and they found out it was a tomato stain. A toxicology screen also came back. There were no drugs in De La Plaza's system when he died. He was drunk, but he wasn't on like any kind of weird drugs that would make him freak out. Okay. So there's no evidence in that kitchen that he washed a knife, used a knife from the kitchen, washed it, and put it away. There's no evidence of that. Doesn't mean it didn't happen. I'm just saying there's no evidence. All right. So then Dr. Venus Azar, that's the one I just showed you, the lady, conducted the autopsy with the medical examiner's office, along with the 3 blows that killed him. She noted a number of blunt force trauma injuries, including small abrasions to the forehead, lip, and arm. Now that's interesting, but not necessarily. So here we go again. He could have gotten them because somebody attacked him. He could have gotten them because when you're starting to pass out, and the whole place was kind of trashed. There's a lot of things that are like messed up in the place, and so you see, I don't see things falling, and then you see these whatever these white things are they bags? I don't know what the hell they are. Was this caused by him when he's staggering around, or was this caused by the emergency team coming in trying to take care of him? And there's something on the floor that I would think that's not normally on the floor. Did he knock that over because he's staggering around? And here is this is where it's a computer. So there's some bleeding out there, but then again, you see the blood on the computer, but you don't see the blood on the phone. And then under him is a watch, and I'll get to the watch in a little bit. So could he have staggered around knocking things over? And in knocking things over, did he abrade parts of his body? You know, you're hitting things and your face is crashing onto something and your arm's crashing. You can get all kinds of little stuff. Not major stuff, but little stuff. So again, we don't know what that even means. So we can't go crazy over it because it's not information that is worthwhile. Okay, let me go a little further on this. All right. And sorry that it rebooted. No information has been obtained that elucidates the manner in this case, Azar wrote. Although no one has any knowledge of suicidal ideation or attempts by the decedent, the scene is not inconsistent with self-inflicted stab wounds. That is true. However, it is not possible to rule out homicide, which is also true. Therefore, the manner will be undetermined. I don't blame her. People want people to be absolute about something they cannot be absolute about. I think she's correct. In interviews, Azar was also indecisive. She's not indecisive. Azar was looking at the evidence saying, I cannot make a conclusion on the manner of death. The cause of death I can do. He was stabbed. And the stabbing caused him to bleed out. And that's what killed him. The manner of death, how it happened, is kind of questionable. I do not blame her for this. She says to 48 hours, I did not call this a suicide at the scene. In fact, I remember this is a homicide because it looked like more of a homicide. I have been swayed back and forth because none of this makes sense. It is very difficult. It is one of these odd cases. Who would want to kill this guy? What was the motive? If it wasn't robbery, there's no evidence of a struggle. Now, mind you, there's no evidence of a struggle inside the house. I mean, in spite of the crash stuff, or maybe the EMTs did it. I don't even know. But some of the stuff, I think he just staggered around and as he was falling apart and falling down, he hit things. But there's no sign of a struggle in the house between two people. Okay, that's true. Is there a sign of a struggle outside? I'm going to get to that. All right. So at the same time, she was saying that she pointed to De La Plaza's missing appointments and spending more money than usual in the weeks before his death. All right. She said that could be an indicator of someone who is depressed. Who knows? I didn't know this man. She's correct. So he's missed some appointments. He spent a lot of money. Does that mean he's like tired of life and it's just say screw it? Hard to say. So anyway, some guy comes along. Who is this guy? The father, Francois de la Plaza, holds a press conference. He says that he and his family believe De La Plaza opened his door and was attacked on the front porch. He managed to get back inside and lock the door behind him. That would mean he only opened the door once and closed it once, and the neighbor says twice. But he came out, somebody attacked him, and then he went back in and died of blood loss. Based on the angle of entrance, he could not have done it himself. That's not true. I don't know what he's talking about. I don't understand that. No knife was ever found. No, a knife was found. They couldn't prove that the knife was the one used in the in the stabbing. they couldn't come up with blood on the knife, which could he have washed it well enough while he was dying? I don't know. It's kind of hard to believe. And again, is he trying to give the $100,000 to his parents? Is that his whole motive for faking this crap? Because theoretically, if you just want to kill yourself and you don't care whether your parents get $100,000 or if there's even an insurance policy, you don't need to go through faking a murder. You can just stab yourself and drop on the ground, you know what I mean? And leave the knife next to you. He said he called it appalling that one of the richest countries in the world and one of the richest cities in the county failed to properly investigate the case. All right. Do I know they failed to properly investigate the case? I do not know. I don't know. I didn't work. If I could go to the San Francisco Police Department and review all of their notes, I might know. I might say, my God, you didn't do crap. Or I might say, you interviewed the neighbors, you interviewed everybody possible, you examined everything and you just couldn't come up with an answer. Sometimes that happens. I don't know. All right. So in September 2009, they did some reviews, outside reviews. In 2009, the Los Angeles Police Department investigation speculated that De La Plaza's cause of death was likely suicide. This is Los Angeles Police Department, but pointed to many issues with the SFPD's initial investigation, making a definitive determination impossible. In particular, LAPD blamed poor communication at the scene for probable loss of evidence. Again, I don't know. A second review done by former San Francisco medical examiner Dr. Michael Ferenc was clear in its conclusion this was a homicide. All right, so why is that? Let me go to Ferenc. And I like this guy's stuff. And I'm always thrilled. I'm thrilled. Some people, it's a weird thing in the world, especially profilers and detectives and people on TV. They want to be the only one that's any good. It's like, and profilers particularly, the FBI has had their like clench on profiling. They're like, oh, if you're not an FBI profiler, you're nobody. It's like, and I'm like, how many detectives are there in the country? Thousands and thousands and thousands. How many doctors? Thousands and thousands. School teachers, thousands and thousands. Lawyers, thousands and thousands. Profilers, only are 9 from the FBI. Why the heck can't we have tons of profilers? I like my work. I think I'm good. But if I'm basing things on scientific analysis and not some kind of the fact I can read the minds of killers, why can't there be hundreds of other good profilers out there? Thousands of them. Why can't they be taught to be good profilers? That's why I have an issue with the FBI. I swear they just want to keep a little lid on it and they want to be the only ones that can ever profile anything. And I don't like their profiling technique. So I'm not happy with them. I want profiling to be in every police department. I want either a profiler in big police departments who's actually studied all of the proper deductive criminal profiling that I would teach, or I'd like to see detectives learn more, which is why I have this channel. Anyway, all right, let me go on to Ferenc, which I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, Michael, because I like you and I'm sad if I'm not pronouncing your name properly. I would know this maybe from the 48 hours. I'm not sure it was in there. Can't remember if they said anything with his name because that CBS channel is awful and it wouldn't. I stopped in the middle and it wouldn't reboot in the middle and I had to start all over. It had massive advertising. It was just horrible. So anyway, Michael, thank you. Okay. Review of death scene and autopsy findings of Mr. Hugues de la Plaza. As per your request, I've reviewed the crime scene photograph. He got to see the crime scene photograph, not this crap behind me, but the real ones. Crime scene video. Ooh, there was video. Okay. So far, if they did both of those things, I'm happy. Relevant articles of clothing. That's something I'd like to know. I've never heard what the hell this guy was wearing. That can make a difference in how, if you're stabbing through something thin, you're going to have more blood spatter. You're going to have something thick. You're going to have to clean the knife off as it comes out. There's a lot of issues with clothing. I have no clue what this dude was wearing. And he also had the autopsy report, which I'd love to see, related to this gentleman's death. Inspector Casillas, that was the guy I showed you, this dude here. Inspector Casillas gave me an excellent overview of the case. When I met with him and his colleagues this past Friday, it was thorough and detailed. I'm always a little concerned sometimes when I don't necessarily want to have their opinions. I prefer to see the police reports and all the forensic reports, every piece of report you've got, all your interviews. I don't really want to hear what you have to say because you're trying to sway me to your thinking. I prefer not. So when I've worked with police departments, I tell them, yeah, don't tell me anything. Just let me start with, and I tell them what I want to start with. And then keep bringing these boxes in order. As you know, this unfortunate gentleman suffered 3 stab wounds. That's an absolute, and was found dead inside a secure residence in the morning of June 2nd, 2007. Extensive blood pattern evidence was seen throughout several of the rooms, no question, and on the front door stair area sidewalk, also true, the outside. Of the 3 stab wounds, the stab wound to the left base of the neck that transected the left subclavian vessels, a large artery and a large vein beneath the collarbone, and penetrated the lung. Okay, that was actually what happened. Okay, so here, to the left base of the neck. Again, it's not in the neck, so left base of the neck, sorry. So transected the left subclavian vessels, a large artery and a large vein beneath the collarbone, and penetrated the lung, undoubtedly the most significant injury. All right, almost certainly this was the source of most of the bloodshed seen. I agree with that. And copious bleeding from this wound would be immediate or almost immediate. And obviously it was almost because he could walk through the entire house. He was alive for a little bit of time. Once this particular injury was inflicted, this gentleman likely would exsanguinate and expire in a matter of a minute or 2. Okay, people get confused on this because he went in from outside where the most of the, it seems he was stabbed outside. That's what it does seem. Whether he did it himself or somebody else. He was stabbed outside, came back in, went into the kitchen, and I'm going to get into why I think he went into the kitchen. He went into the kitchen, and you can see all the blood, and he comes back out of the kitchen, wanders through into the house, and collapses. How long did that take? People think things take a lot longer than they do. You can walk through an area in 45 seconds. I have a smallish house. He seems to have a smallish apartment. If I left my bedroom, I could walk into the living room, back into the kitchen, and back out to the front door probably in maybe 30 seconds even. One time, one of my cases, the person was stabbed. There was a child was stabbed. I forgot how many times he was stabbed, like 70 times or something outrageous. And people said, how long would that take? And so I ran around my room. I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And it was really short period of time. Like I think it was like a minute or a minute and a half or something crazy. So yes, I think he didn't last very long, maybe 2 minutes at the most. And some of it may depend on when he was stabbed and things went where they did. People tend to do this. Now, is it going to stop all the bleeding? No. Is some amount of pressure maybe slow it down a wee bit? Maybe. Maybe it nicked something and for 30 seconds the nick didn't explode open. Who knows? I don't have the autopsy report. So it could be that some little aspect was slowed down long enough. And that sometimes long enough is just helped you live for 30 more seconds. So anyway, he says that. Once this particular injury was inflicted, okay, we did that, a minute or 2. Okay, the bloodshed evidence begins on the front door steps and the sidewalk. This is accurate, okay? So it definitely happened outside. The police thought maybe it happened inside and he walked outside. That is absolutely not true. And this really good guy explains this. Only one trail of drip blood, the pattern indicates rapid, fairly active flow, is seen from the stairs to the front door. This will be the stairs here to the front door, up to here. Throughout the interior scene, shoe prints consistent with the decedent's shoes are seen, but none are seen outside. So he wasn't stepping in his blood outside or inside. Let's say he stabbed himself in the kitchen. He walks all the way. He's drip, 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 and he's walking. By the time he gets outside, you'd see shoe prints. There are none outside. So he's saying that if this gentleman had inflicted his own wounds in the kitchen area at the other end of the apartment and had walked bleeding to the front door, then one would expect bloody shoe prints and 2 trails of blood on the outside stairs and landing, coming out, and going back. And you only see 1 trail. He was stabbed here. Instead, blood shoe prints and 2 trails of blood are seen in the kitchen and in the hallway, indicating a single round trip into and out of the kitchen after his soles were bloodstained. So he gets stabbed out here, or he stabbed himself out here. He could have gone out with a knife and stabbed himself outside. And then he goes into the house, and he goes into the kitchen, and he goes out of the kitchen to the hallway, and then So, all right. On the concrete wall adjacent to the staircase landing are occasional smaller drops of blood consistent with cast off from the arm movements of a knife being plunged and removed from the decedent. All right. Whether he did it or somebody else did it. So they're basically saying, he says there's some drops that look like they hit the wall. I can't see that in these photos, but I agree with him. Either he or somebody else stabbed him right here outside. All right. And then he goes on some other stuff. And then the presence of bloody shoe prints consisted with the decedent's shoes and the absence on the front stairs or on the front door verge of expected bloody shoe prints that could belong to the assailant strongly suggests his attackers did not follow him into the apartment. This is very true. So nobody followed him in to mess up anything and bring his own footprints into the apartment. Once he got in there and locked the door behind him. So either he stabbed himself and went in the apartment and locked the door, or somebody stabbed him and then he escaped into the apartment and locked the door. All right. There's no sign inside. Oh, if the movement, okay, this is the good point he makes, and this is why I like this guy. However, several photographs of the front room indicate that some items have been moved. If the movement of these items is not attributable to emergency responders, then it would suggest that someone did enter and move things around after the bloodshed. He's being very honest here. I saw things move too. So did the assailant get in, not leave any shoe prints or whatever, and move stuff around, or was that just emergency responders? This is why you need to know what the emergency responders did when they arrived, because they're coming in to save a life if they can save a life, and they can screw up a scene really badly. So can firemen. They fire. They sometimes there's like somebody tries to set the house on fire in order to cover up the murder, and they come in with a hose and they got to do what they have to do to save somebody, but it often can screw up a murder investigation. All right, toxicology showed that he had alcohol in the blood, but not any drugs. So he had a lot to drink, but he didn't have any drugs. Now, here's an interesting part. His stomach consists of a little over 3 ounces of material, including peas. On the kitchen countertop was a plate of rice and peas. And again, rice and peas that he cooked was white rice, apparently, and green peas. So he's not a West Indian. He did not make rice and peas, which is actually white rice and kidney beans. I know the difference. I was married to a West Indian. So, Jamaican. But so he was eating, I guess it's a French thing or just a bachelor thing. I don't know. He cooked that. When he cooked that, we don't know, as I pointed out. However, he says here, there is no reason to believe this gentleman had delayed gastric emptying, thus suggesting that after returning to his apartment, he at least briefly began to eat. So it's only supposed to be 30 minutes in the apartment, right? And up here on the stove, there's some rice and peas. And you'll see, this is interesting to me. The plate is here. It's not next to the computer. It's in the kitchen. Now, it's 2:00 in the morning. I don't know if this is leftovers and he just, didn't give a crap. He's a little hungry. So he just scooped something out on a plate and started eating it while he was standing here. This is important. Or whether he actually cooked it. Rice and peas. Rice is going to take at least 20 minutes, 25 minutes if you let it sit. The peas, I don't know how the pea part worked. I guess you just throw them in with them where you add them after. I don't know how he made his stuff. But if he's only home for 30 minutes, did he roll in the house and immediately say, God, I'm hungry, race to the kitchen, make some lunch, and then, or whatever, the morning drinking snack. And right when he pulled the food out, put it on a plate and started eating, somebody knocked on the door because very little is eaten. And it's right here in the kitchen. So he wasn't sitting down and consumed an entire plate of food. So because it looked like to me, he was interrupted, that he was just starting to eat something, just a little bit of food. And for some reason, he went to the front door, opened it, and walked outside and shut the door behind him. That's what it looks like to me. I find it hard to believe. He started eating, and in the middle of eating, he said, I should stab myself. So he found the knife and stabbed himself. Oh, I start to eat. Oh, I should go outside and stab myself. That seems a little improbable to me. So to me, this is a big clue that he started to eat and something interrupted his eating, which to me was a knock on the door, because why else is he going outside suddenly? I mean, he's not going as, I can't come up with a good reason. It's his own apartment. He has access to a bathroom. It's not like the bathroom is through his roommate's room, and he has to go outside to pee in the bushes. So he said, God, suddenly have to pee. I've been drinking a lot. So he goes outside to pee. Why would he do that when he's in his own apartment? So that makes no sense. So why does he go out? And the only reason I can think of, because it doesn't seem like he planned a date, is somebody knocked on the door and he's kind of been drinking. Maybe he thought his friends were showing up. He opens the door. Why he goes out as opposed to just opening the door and standing inside and then shutting the door is interesting. Why does he step out of the place and shut the door behind him? Keep that in mind. All right, so let's see what he says here. He made some phone calls. He ate some food. He made some phone calls. This is why I want to know who he made the phone calls to, and could that person have come over and killed him? I don't know. Because then maybe the person said, hey, I'm coming over. Hey, I'm going to come over in just a second. All right, cool. And he's eating his food, and here's knock, knock. He opens up the door and says, hey, what's up? And he steps out and has a conversation with this person. Who was that person? Who he made the phone calls to? What was one of those phone calls to? A woman? Was one of those phone calls to a friend he was having an issue with? Was one of those phone calls to a drug dealer? I don't know. And there was this, he said there was, he talks about a linear marking on his pointer finger, marks not described in the autopsy report. Mark may be an abrasion or a superficial incised wound, maybe a defense wound on his pointer finger of his right hand. Interesting. All right. So then he says this, summarizing the sequence, and then I'm going to go to my analysis, my personal opinion of the most likely thing to happen. Summarizing the sequence of events, I infer from the reviewed evidence as follows. Mr. de la Plaza returned home from night clubbing around 200 hours and entered his residence, so 2 o'clock in the morning. There he ate some food and apparently made phone calls and utilized his computer during the next half an hour, according to the investigator, Casillas. I don't know that he ate some food and made some phone calls and utilized his computer. I don't think that's quite the way it went. I think he went home, made some phone calls, utilized the computer, made some phone calls, and then ate. I think the eating was the last thing to happen. For some reason, and for some reason is perfectly fine for a person who doesn't know what the reason is. When a psychopath says, for some reason, I stabbed the person to death, then the for some reason is suspicious. But when you don't know, you say for some reason, because he doesn't know. He exited his apartment, or at least stepped outside to answer his door. Either upon exiting or at a subsequent return. Again, he doesn't know whether when he came out, somebody attacked him, or when he was turning around to go back, somebody attacked him. An assailant or assailants who was or were in most likely position on the lower landing of the staircase. Let's go back to the staircase. Down here, somewhere down here on the staircase. He was attacked. The victim retreated inside the apartment, and the assailant most likely did not follow inside. Correct. At some point, he briefly stopped near the overturned television entertainment center. At some point, well, I think after he went to the kitchen and came back, and I'll talk about why I think he went to the kitchen. And then there was overturned television entertainment center where rapid bleeding resulted in a large volume of blood on the floor. Well, that's where he basically was bleeding out, and he probably was collapsing on top of things. He soon collapsed from hemorrhagic shock in the front room where he was found. That's the end of the report, which I think is perfectly reasonable. Now, what the heck do I think happened? All right, I'm going to give you my theories, and I'm going to go to you in the chat room and see what you have to say. Okay, hold on a second. All right. I'm going to shut this computer so I can not look at it. All right. Now, I don't think he killed himself. I think that's ludicrous, only because I see not one thing that really supports that. Could it have happened? Yes, but there's really, I'm not getting anything that makes any sense, especially because I think he was interrupted eating. I don't think he interrupted himself out. Oh man, this sucks. I cook like crap. I should kill myself. Some people might think that, but it's a bachelor and he's drunk. I'm pretty sure anything he eats is okay for him. So I don't think he killed himself. Let's start with that. Somebody stabbed him outside. The question, there's two questions: why he would go outside, and this is problematic. And I don't know this guy's how he behaves, especially when you have too much to drink. Is he the kind of guy who will answer the door no matter what because he thinks it's his neighbor? Maybe it is his neighbor. Thinks it's his neighbor. Maybe he's got a running deal with. He didn't have any drugs in his system. I don't know about his drug use. Maybe he liked to get hold of certain types of drugs. Maybe he said, "Hey, you got some stuff? Come by the house and knock." I don't know if that's true. So maybe if you heard a knock at 2 a.m, he's been drinking. He's like, "Oh man, I'm getting mushrooms. Getting some shrooms." Who knows? I don't know what his issues are. Maybe he's told women, "Hey, you feeling like some? Knock on my door." I don't know. He was a partier. He was a womanizer. He was a happy-go-lucky, but kind of a free spirit. And he was in his 30s. And he was still having a dang good time. So I don't know if he'd open his door no matter what, because he thought something good was on the other side. Door number 1. Hey, even if it's door number 2 or 3, I think I'm going to still try. I don't know. But somebody knocked on that door. Otherwise, he would never have opened it. He's not going to stop eating and to go out and what? Again, there's no good reason for him to go outside that I know of. I didn't hear if he was a smoker. I didn't see any evidence he was a smoker. But let's say he was a smoker. Smokers usually smoke in their own dang houses, although a few people will go outside to smoke because they don't like the smoke in their house. They go outside on the porch or whatever, smoke a cigarette and come back in so the house doesn't smell like. I haven't heard anything about that. That's one reason he could go outside on his own, and then somebody could have come up and talked to him, and he would have maybe shut the door behind him because he doesn't want the smoke going into the house. So he goes outside to smoke a cigarette or some weed or whatever, but they said no drugs in the system. So he could go out and smoke a cigarette and close the door behind him, and then somebody comes up to him and they have an altercation and he gets stabbed and he tries to get back in the house. You would think if that happened, you would see a cigarette laying on that outside, wouldn't you? Because he'd be in the middle of smoking and all of a sudden some guy talks to him and he'd at least stomp on the cigarette if he was talking to the guy, or if he was attacked while he had the cigarette in his hand, that would drop on the ground. I do not believe that the assailant would spend his time cleaning the porch off of cigarette butts. So I don't see any evidence that he smoked. I don't see any evidence that he went out to smoke. As I said, he doesn't need to go outside to throw up. He doesn't need to go outside to pee. He can do that in his house. He's got nothing blocking him between him and the bathroom. So why is he outside? And that's the biggest mystery of this whole thing. What led him to open the door? And it was so it's not such a great neighborhood. So is it possible that somebody saw him earlier? Some thug saw him earlier, some guy who was on the street thinking, hey, maybe I could get something off of this guy, and went and knocked on his door thinking maybe he'll open the door. And he did. It's kind of weird. Why is he not on camera? Again, I don't know where the stupid cameras are. But it does seem like he went outside for some reason in the middle of eating those rice and peas. Goes outside. He is attacked. How was he attacked? Now I'm going to show you how I think he was attacked. There's no evidence of another person having blood all over them and going down the street. There's no blood trail going down the street. Now, if you're attacking somebody, and let's say he's up against the front door, like, or he's standing on the steps. He's like, no. And you go like this, and you're doing like this. That blood is coming back on you and on the knife. And there's a lot of blood coming back on you. You would think, then the guy runs off. You would think you would see blood going down the street, off of his clothing, and the knife. Now, the knife, okay, I'm going to point out the issue with the knife. It is possible that if the knife is pulled out and the guy has some way to just wipe it off, that's why I don't know what he was wearing. He could wipe it off on him. He could wipe it off if it was a thicker outfit, like if he had a sweater, he could go through the sweater and it would keep it from spattering on outside on the ground. Or the guy could have something in his hand, a towel of some sort, and do this. Or he could have a jacket and do this. I don't know. But usually when you're stabbing somebody this way and then you're backing off, usually you'll see a blood trail. There is not one. which is one of the reasons the police thought he could have killed himself, because there was no blood trail and no other person on that supposed street camera, wherever it was. But there's another way that I think is interesting, which is possible, which is he comes out and has whatever conversation he has. And whether there's an altercation face to face or whether he turns away to go back in his house, I think he was stabbed from behind. I think whoever attacked him put his arm around him and did this. See where my arm is? If you have your arm in the middle, you stab below, which is the abdomen. You can stab above, which is the chest. You can stab to the neck. So boom, boom, boom. But you're behind the person. That prevents their blood from getting all over you, for one. And it keeps it on the other side. His watch. Now, here's a very weird thing. His watch. This is his watch. This watch was underneath him on the floor, supposedly under his body. I don't see a lot of blood around, but I don't understand quite these pictures. But anyway, that's his watch. You see, it's ripped here. I don't know what kind of watch it was. I can't tell how much it costs. I looked up a watch online that looks sort of like that. It came out about $300. He's a pretty extravagant fellow. I'm going to say this wasn't a $10 Timex. It probably had a little bit of quality to it. And it is ripped. Now, it could be ripped for two reasons. One is because the offender perhaps wanted the watch. Maybe he saw an expensive watch and grabbed for the watch and grabbing for it. He tried to grab for it, and there was a little tussle there. And then when the guy fought back, he stabbed. And then whatever reasons, he lost his grip and the guy went in the house, and then the watch, mostly ripped off, fell to the floor. Possible. Or it was just in the struggle outside, the watch did get ripped, but the watch wasn't an item that the person who killed him was trying to grab. And there's no way we're going to know that. It could be just that he had his arm up here and the guy hit it, or he could actually have ripped it off himself. He could have gotten into the house and he's falling and just did that. So we're never going to know whether this watch has any meaning. I'd like to know the cost of the watch. But I don't know if he knocked it off himself or somebody tried to grab a hold of it while they were struggling, or whether that was an object that the person was trying to get from him, which would be a robbery gone bad. Can't tell you. But I do believe the guy attacked him from behind. And that means, it's another interesting thing here. That means if he got attacked from behind, he opens his door, steps out, closes the door behind him. Why is he getting attacked from behind? Because he's turned around to go back in. That makes me wonder. He went down to talk to the guy somehow partway and turns around and the guy attacks him. I think it sounds very unlikely that a guy just came off the street, knocked on his door and said, "Hey, I'm a homeless guy. Would you come out here and give me some money?" At 2:00 in the morning, you don't usually knock on people's doors like that. Especially if the guy's been in there for half an hour. Even if you saw him earlier, would you? It's possible. It's not likely. So part of me thinks it could be actually someone he knows for some reason. Some people think it's, he's sleeping around, so maybe it's somebody's pissed off boyfriend or husband. I don't buy that. That he would come and knock on the guy's door at 2:00 in the morning, not come in, talk to him on the stoop, and then he turns around, you stab him to death. It seems a little unlikely. So I don't know. I'm like the guy who did the report. I can only say so much. I do not think he stabbed himself. I think that's not true. I think he went outside because somebody knocked. He was interrupted from his rice and peas, went outside. Somebody was out there. I think he spent time talking to them, turned around and got attacked. Now, whether it could be his neighbor who knocked on the door and said, "Hey, I need some help." And he came outside and they had some conversation, or it could be that he expected a drug dealer to come up, or expected a friend to come by that he had been talking to, something. But something took him out of the apartment and he was willing to close the door behind himself. That's, to me, a very big clue. That, to me, if there's a homeless dude on the porch, you probably aren't going to go outside. You're probably going to just hold the door up and go, "What do you want? What's up? I mean, he might have had a lot too much to drink, and maybe he's a little like careless, but maybe he opened up the door and he knew who it was, or he was willing to talk to the person, close the door behind, and something went wrong. Will this case ever be solved? I don't think so, but I can tell you, I don't see this as I don't think he took his own life. I think it is clearly a homicide, but why he went out and whom he talked to is important. If I were able to go and work with the San Francisco Police Department and review everything, I'd go back to who is he on the phone with? What are his neighbors like? Does he have people stop by his house for any reason, for drugs, sex, or whatever in the middle of the night that he'd open the door for and walk outside? Was anybody truly pissed at him? And I would want to know more about the watch. But let me mention the phone. Some people say he came in the house. Why the hell didn't he go straight to the phone? I want to talk about this. Why didn't he go try to call 911? Why was he walking slowly through the house? This is important. Well, once he'd been stabbed in the neck, he only had a minute or two to live. A lot of times, people who've been stabbed, I looked this up a lot. I've looked this up more than once because I've always been kind of fascinated. What did it feel like when somebody stabbed you? A lot of people didn't realize they were stabbed. They didn't know. I mean, they go like, I didn't know I was stabbed. And then it wasn't until I saw the blood coming out that I felt burning, and I didn't know. So the fact that he was stabbed abdomen and chest, he might not even realize he had been stabbed at that point. And maybe when finally the neck, maybe he realized, oh my God, something's going on here. I feel blood coming down. He goes like this, goes in the house, locks it up. He doesn't know he's about to die in 2 minutes. Now, also when you've been stabbed and you may be in shock at that point and not know what to do. People don't always like, oh, help, and run to the phone. They're like, this happened so quickly. Suddenly you've been stabbed and blood is gushing out of you and blood is coming all over the floor. And you're like, what the heck? The phone. The last thing I think he was doing was eating that food in the kitchen. Now, I don't know about you, but my phone, it goes with me to the bathroom. It goes with me to the kitchen. Mostly because I'm older and I think if I don't fall over, I should have this phone with me. So, personal. That's my help. I've fallen and I can't get up. I need 911. But I live alone. So, I tend to get up even in the night and take the phone with me just because I like it with me. But a lot of times people, they're on the phone, they put it down, they pick it up. I think he may have thought the phone was in the kitchen. Maybe he went to the kitchen. Last thing he could remember was eating that food. He goes to the kitchen. The phone is not in the kitchen. And he staggers back out to where the phone is, and he never gets to actually touch the phone. He manages to collapse over the computer or whatever he touched over there. But again, he's not. It's not like he's got a good ability to have sense. Like, oh, I can see the phone. I'm going to reach for it. The guy's dying. He's bleeding out everywhere. He can't think that clearly. So the expected movements may not be realistic. So I think he just didn't know where the freaking phone was. And that's why when I got to take this out. It's uncomfortable at the moment. The police thought maybe the reason it was suicide was because he didn't go for the phone and therefore he wasn't interested in getting help. But I think it's more a case of shock. And that he didn't know where he was, what was going on. He couldn't focus and put his go in the right directions. And by the time he was even close to the phone, he collapsed. And that was that. So I'll stand by. I think it's a homicide. And I'd love to see all the rest of the information because I didn't get it from the documentary. I'd love to see all the reports in San Francisco to see if there's anything that could be followed up. I would love it. It's one of those cases where it does fascinate me now that I've looked at it. Whether I could ever come up with anything more than the police may have done everything they could. They may have checked out the phone calls he made and checked out those people, and they all had alibis. They may have checked out the neighbor, and the neighbor was perfectly fine and a great person. They may have not come up with anybody who would show up in the night, and they just they had no clue. So the medical examiner says undetermined. I understand her point because she is not the detective. So all she can say is I don't have proof one way or the other. I say as a profiler, I see the evidence leans toward homicide. But if I were in a position, I don't know, I would not say the same thing. But I think it leans toward homicide. I think he was interrupted while eating the rice and peas and went to the front door for a reason that he knew when it was knocked, he was not surprised. He opened the door, he closed it behind him to talk to the person, which I think he had to know to some extent who that was. And I don't know why they stabbed him. So that's my thoughts on that. Let me go to your 294 comments. All right. Mike says, suicide does not add up. Suicides are rarely impulsive. Not true. Not true. Okay. Let me restate. Let me eat and do routine stuff before I end it. That's true. That's true. It makes no sense. That's true. But a lot of families think, oh, my loved one was at dinner. We had a great time. He went home and hung himself in the bathroom. Therefore, he was murdered. No, because he has issues, and they will. A lot of men, especially men, will do this very quickly. They will. It's the way it is. But in the middle of eating rice and peas, I have a bit of an issue, and I don't see any motives anyplace. Let's see. That's it. I don't think he knew where the cell phone was. You've been stabbed, and then you've got 2 minutes left. You're not feeling real good. Your brain isn't working real well. I mean, sometimes I can't find my damn phone, and my brain is fine. I haven't been stabbed, but I still can't find the phone. I'm like, what the heck? Where did I leave the stupid phone? Crap, And again, I say I usually carry the phone with me everywhere. I used to do that because I was on TV so much and I didn't want to miss a phone call, but now I do it just for safety. But once in a while I've veered from that, and then I'm like, what the heck? And of course, that's the moment that the phone is on silent, so I can't call the phone from my iPad and can't find the stupid thing. So yeah, I can't. If any of us can do that when we're not drunk and not stabbed, I think when he's drunk and stabbed, yeah, seriously in shock. Are you seriously in shock, or was he? I'm not sure. Let's see. I lose stuff all the time. It's usually in my left hand. That does occur. Oh, I don't know what I do without Find My Phone. Yeah, my Find My Phone is not working now, Tim, and it is really upsetting because I also depend on that on occasion. It's like, what the heck? I need to find out where the stupid phone is. Let's see. Going backwards in time now for some of your great comments. Oh, a lot of people in the chat, someone says they have been affected by someone who's taken their life, and that's true. And if this, and by the way, if this video gets demonetized, because, and this is one reason when you do videos, I mean, the lifeblood of doing a YouTube channel is to be able to support the channel. And when you get demonetized, it's kind of a massive blow. If it gets demonetized, I will have my son edit it and put a thing in the beginning that says, this has been demonetized. Please support this channel by clicking the $sign, because I'm going to do that because I want to do things that I think the Dardine case, when I did that one, there was no way they were going to monetize that case because it was so awful. But so many people were interested in it. And I'm like, I want to do things that people want to learn about and want to know about. But on the other hand, the channel has to survive. So if you do a whole bunches of stuff that they demonetize, you can't survive. So I did put that little notification. It's been demonetized. Please support. And everybody did. And it was great. So I might have to do that for this case too, because they're very sensitive at YouTube. This is a good point. Lex, people who commit suicide tend not to stage elaborate scenes. That is rare, unless they're trying to stage it as a homicide so that the insurance can go to the family. That I have seen. Or that they want to blame somebody. Occasionally somebody actually kills themselves and wants to blame the husband or the wife so that they go to prison for a crime they did not commit. That does happen. It is rare. You are correct, though. It is rare. He didn't want to share his food. Shaz. Rice and peas. I don't think that was not a hot item. Okay, Mike says, This was likely a surprise attack, never expected. I absolutely think he did not see this coming. Did not want this person inside his personal space, person not close or a friend. Interesting. Possible. Now, then you're pointing out something good here. This is reasonable. This is a good alternative look at this, and I like this. One of the reasons we want more than one person looking at a crime, even if I think I'm right, I may not be right. Maybe Mike is more right. Okay, let's say Hugues opens the door and he's like, I don't know about this sketchy person. And instead of just peeking through the door, he's afraid the person will open. So he goes outside to shut the door behind him so the person doesn't go in his house. Is that possible? Yes. People have different ways of doing things. And this is sometimes what we don't understand. One person will say, oh, that person would never do that. And yet that person does that. And the example I always give is that people will say, profiler Pat Brown would never open the door to a stranger. If somebody knocked on her door, she would not open it. That's not true. I've opened a lot of doors, very late hours, that I probably shouldn't have opened. I have this curiosity issue. And usually I'm like, oh, who's this dude outside my house? And luckily, then I'd say, oh, is your son here? Is so-and-so here? Oh, thank God. It's one of my son's friends. Look like a thug. But I'm a little curious. So that can happen. People open doors all the time to people they don't know. And I don't know how every family says, oh, they never do that. Yeah, they do it all the time. People hitchhike. Families say won't hitchhike. They might hitchhike under an unusual circumstance. For example, never in my life have I ever approved of hitchhiking. I think it's dangerous as heck. I have hitchhiked twice in my life. Hitchhiked. How did this happen? Once because I was stranded in a location where no matter what, I was in Africa. I couldn't get anywhere. I'm like, I'm standing on the side of the road for like a ridiculous amount of time trying to get the bus and couldn't get the bus. And finally this guy showed up and he's like, you need a ride into the city. And I'm like, yeah. And I was so desperate at that point, I took the ride. Second one, my car broke down on the Beltway in Maryland at night between exits, like dead center. And it was cold as crap out there. And I get out of the car. I'm trying to figure out what to do. I stayed on the other, away from the road on the other side of the car. First guy pulls up and he says, hey, can I help you? I said, yes. Can I give you here's some quarters. Can you call my husband and tell him where I'm at? And he took the quarters and then he threw them and drove away. So obviously he wanted me in his vehicle. That was really creepy. And nobody was coming by. I was freezing. And finally, this guy pulled over and he was in a little small car and he looked like a geek. And he said, do you want me to do something? I said, could you? He said, do you want me to call somebody for you? Because you're out here stranded. I can call somebody for you. Go to the next exit and call. And I said, can you just give me a ride? And I took that ride. So twice in my life, only twice, did I ever do that. And people would say, Pat Brown would never do that, but twice I did because of circumstances. So people will do things. And if they're drunk, they'll do things that maybe they wouldn't do when they were sober. So we're never absolutely sure, which is the point. Hey, babe, come over, share my rice and peas and pick up a line. Who knows? We don't know who even talked to. That is a problem. And Shada says next door. I mean, sometimes witnesses are the killer. Sometimes they're just witnesses. We don't know. Maybe he rang up a woman and her husband answered. I really don't go with if somebody came over to kill him because he was sleeping with their wife or girlfriend. I mean, I doubt that. I mean, it seems a little far-fetched without, I don't know. It just seems far-fetched to me but it could be true. Could be true. Let's see. Okay, wait a minute. Charlotte says, could it have been that someone he was seeing knocked on the door and had someone with him and was mad at him and killed him? I guess. The thing is, we don't know. And that's the whole point. We can theorize all we want that a woman was pissed at him, that a man was pissed at him. From the way he was murdered, I'm going to say it was male. Okay. Everybody likes to, all these days, you watch these movies and these women are like super women, and they can beat guys up and, punch them out. And I'm like, yeah, that's not happening the way, I've been in martial arts. It doesn't work that way. You a lightweight, they're a heavyweight, you dead. That's the way it works. So you can get him with a surprise punch, but you're not going to do a whole bunch of stuff. So the fact that some woman would be able to attack him and manage to stab him. Women do like to stab in the chest, by the way, straight on. That kind of a female thing. A lot of times if a woman gets mad at her husband, you've been cheating on me, stick a knife straight to the chest. That's very female. But the way the 3 stab wounds, and the way I think he came from, I think the person was behind him. I don't know. I don't see this as a female thing. I think it's a male. Now, he's not a huge guy or anything, so it's not like the guy was trying to take out Mike Tyson. So it didn't have to, theoretically it could be female. I just don't think so. And I just don't see 2 people showing up and saying, that's the guy that I'm sleeping with. So, I don't know. It seemed to me he turned around to go back in the house. And then he was attacked. So whether the person attacked him for the watch, they tried to grab for the watch and he pulled back and the guy stabbed him for that reason. It was a simple, weird street robbery, or the watch was just pulled off in a struggle. I don't know. Why it didn't get completely dumped on. Why did the watch didn't end up on the outside and end up inside the house? Why it clung on for that long, because it obviously didn't land outside. Or did he just rip it when he was falling down and was like, having problems, and he's like, And I haven't seen all of the photos. I haven't seen everything in this case, so I can't determine that. Let's see any other thoughts you have of this. No, it does not, Mike. I'm sorry. A woman scorned, knocks at the door. She's not close to him, just to hook up. So he prefers not to let her in. She attacks him. I don't think so. I don't think it's a female. I honestly do not. Possible. That's a pretty brutal stabbing for just what? I'm pretty sure that, just to say this, I'm pretty sure that he's really popular with the ladies. He ain't bad in bed. I don't think they had a bad hookup with him. That's just my guess. So, in which case, I don't think anybody's stabbing him for that reason. Now, that maybe he didn't call her for the second date, and she's pissed off he didn't come back because he was so damn good. I don't know. But I see this as a male, not a female. That's just an opinion. And again, not provable in any way, shape, or form. Let me see a couple more comments before I end here. Oh, that's interesting. Harpa says, I was visiting my aunt 20 years ago in a small town in Denmark, and the mailman just let himself into her house to give her the mail. When I said I was shocked, she said it was normal. Yes, this can be very true. Not everybody locks their front doors, and sometimes people are allowed to just open up the door and put the mail there. That is true. And so it all depends on the people, the culture, and the people in particular. So yeah, we really don't. We have to know the past behaviors before we understand where people are coming from. We do. So, let's see any more other comments before I end here. Yes, this is true. Carla says 48 hours, quotes Hugues. I'm sorry, Hugues. I keep forgetting about the H. Quotes Hugues as saying he was going to find a girl to go home with, or go home and find a girl. Maybe he did encounter a woman on the way home and invite her over, and she said, let me grab something. Oh, wait a minute. Let me see if you said thing further here. Let me grab some what? Okay. Let me grab some weed first. Then she comes back with another guy or girl and they rob him. Could that have happened? Yes. He told his friends he was going to find somebody, but apparently he left without finding somebody. So it doesn't seem like he hooked up even in the future with somebody at the club. So theoretically, he went home and hung out at home. Doesn't appear that he was expecting anybody, making phone calls, doing whatever, eating food. Doesn't seem like he's expecting anybody. But could it have happened in some way, shape or form? Maybe. Because I don't think he knew he was going to be home at that time, because maybe he was hitting on something and he was, I'm going to hit that and get that. He would then have a good time, bring somebody home with him, and he wouldn't be looking forward to anybody showing up and knocking on his door, because he'd already been in the bedroom with her. It is a very strange case for that reason. We just cannot seem to identify who would have shown up at about 2:30 in the morning. And I would like to know who he was talking to on the phone. I'd like to know what sites he was on the computer. Did he say anything to anybody that anybody would know where he lived and would come over? Who would knock on his door at 2:30 in the morning and interrupt his eating rice and peas in the kitchen? I'd like to know that. But will we ever know that? From the outside of the case, absolutely not. From inside of the case, maybe. But hard to say. So we can have all the theories in the world, but I don't know if we can get very far with them. But I hope you learn from this that, first of all, when you watch these documentaries, you may be getting very questionable, crappy information, and it doesn't necessarily add up to things you can understand or figure out. A good story, again, if they're interested in telling a story, they told the story, but they're not actually showing us the evidence and the analysis thereof. And the guy that I like, his essentially equivocal death analysis, crime scene analysis, it was linked to the site, but I don't think it was presented. As far as I know, it wasn't presented. I read through they had a transcript, so I read through that. I didn't see it there. It was just like, here's a transcript, here's his report. And I went to the report and I was like, oh my gosh, this is really good. But they didn't focus on the evidence and all the details, just the story. So when you watch any of these documentaries, always keep aware that you're probably not getting necessarily a really good idea of the crime scene evidence and all of the details you need to know if you wanted to actually analyze the crime and understand what happened. You're getting the story that the producers want to be told. And secondly, if you're outside the investigation, you're always going to be very limited because you don't have the truth about so many things. The camera outside, what did the camera really see? Where was the camera? Could it have, if the cameras actually showed the entire front stoop, and every single minute was there, and all we ever saw was him come out. But then how crappy was the camera? We didn't see him come out and stab himself because he had to stab himself on the front porch, probably. Well, at least his neck. He'd have to at least do the neck because he could have stabbed him others inside. But I think it's hard to, yeah. What did the camera show? They would show him doing something that we would say, oh my God, that he's alone and he's doing this stuff to himself, or where's the other person? And again, we don't know much about the camera, where the video was taken, or were there missing minutes? Was it so grainy you couldn't see anything? Was it off to the side? We don't know. So that's something we don't know. We don't know the entire patterns of everything in the apartment. We don't know what the EMTs, people arriving at the scene, did to screw up the scene. We don't know who he talked to on the phone. We don't know what sites he visited. We don't know about the neighbor. See how many things we don't know because we're outside the investigation and the documentary was crap. So, so when people say, can you look at this and can you analyze it? It took me a long time to analyze this crime because of those issues. And people kept saying, could you please? I've asked you so many times. And I was really questioning whether there was enough to work with to be able to come to any conclusions. And but that's a conclusion I can come to with what I know. And all these things I've told you that I don't know, just recognize that whenever you're watching any documentary or trying to figure out what happened from outside the investigation. So that's that. So that's, Michaela. Thank you, Michaela. Thanks, Pat, for another confusing show. Well, at least you know I'm not a fake. I don't just sit there and go, oh, I know what happened. Here's what happened. No, I want you to learn more than I want you to be impressive. So, Lady Jane says, thanks, Pat, for your, as always, great analysis on this strange case. Well, thank you very much. So, very, very interesting case. It was very interesting. So anyway, thank you for being here. Again, if you're new to the channel, please do like and subscribe. Keep it going. Join Patreon. If you want to be in the chat room with all these wonderful people, even the ones who like to jab at me, and I love you anyway. We all have a good sense of humor. We do have a good sense of humor because otherwise, even these terrible cases, which were, again, everyone feels terrible about what happened. But this is an educational channel, and while we're sitting here discussing things, at least we don't want to be totally as miserable as the family, and friends. We want to at least be a little bit separated from the actual miserable circumstances and understand the educational aspects. So thank you for being here. I'm just laughing at a few things people are saying. Anyway, thank you for being here. And for you guys who are here today, the hangout should be on Wednesday at 3:00, because last week I had to move it because of soccer. Soccer is still an issue for my granddaughter. But Wednesday at 3:00, I hope you will be there, and send along your thoughts and what you want me to go over. And I'll see you then. Bye.